Hello, I'm Jefferson Hack, and on behalf of NOWNESS, it gives me great pleasure to be sitting here with Björk and Andrew Wang. I've got goosebumps sitting here, knowing that we're going to be able to spend about 40 minutes together talking about collaboration, about your new single that dropped today, The Gate, and the film that you guys worked on together, and many, many more things that you might have on the top of your mind that you just want to talk to us about today. So, Björk, congratulations, your single came out today, The Gate. How does it feel?
Yeah, it's like definitely very thrilling. It's really, really cathartic, and yeah, it feels special. Very, yeah, different than before.
It's so unexpected. When I listened to it today, it's so unexpected. Where's all the angst? Where's all the anger? What happened?
Well,
you've come out all light and fluffy.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the last album, yeah, for sure, was very much about grief and sadness. And I guess when you grind the bottom, that conscientiously, you're gonna like eventually float up to the surface and become light and fluffy. And this song is a documentation of that, probably.
Vulnicura was famously, you called it your heartbreak album, and of course it dealt with, you know, your breakup from Matthew Barney, and you know, you exposed your vulnerability, you exposed your pain, you exposed your anger, and all the different emotions that come with that process of, like you said, of grief in a way. And you know, this song opens up with the lyric, "My healing chest wound," and in a way, it's very related to Vulnicura, because Vulnicura also has that image that Andrew designed for the LP cover, with you when you're bent over double, and you've got that bright red chest wound, that open wound from the pain of the breakup. So I guess it's about love, this song, in a way.
Yeah, it's about almost like a metaphysical thing where the wound of heartbreak, where you kind of feel your heart gets broken and your chest kind of implodes, and when that sort of shape, oval shape, restores, it becomes a gate, and then you maybe discover even more so than before that it was there all along, you know, and that it's like a gate that when you are next to people you love, you exchange energy. And I felt really lucky that and privileged that Andy was up for doing this video with us, because we went really deep into, Andy did with us a lot of videos for Vulnicura, and the wound was kind of like going through that whole album. And so to get, especially in the video of To Family, where I'm literally sewing.
That's the VR film that you guys made together that's part of Björk Digital.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
No, and then I sew the wound together, so to come through that with Andy and the sort of visual world, we were kind of almost gone into like short speech describing that he would be the one who directed this video, where actually it heals and you maintain, or you get like healthy currents and energies back, where that, you know, learn how to love in a healthy way again or something.
So Andrew, we won't see the film till Monday when it's premiered on NOWNESS.com. There is a sneak preview of it happening in London for the public on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday. So if the public come to the store, which is in Surrey Street off the Strand in London, they'll be able to experience it as an installation. Tell me, what can we expect, or what can the public expect when they come into the room to be confronted with your visual interpretation of this song?
Again, I think this, like Björk said, this film is kind of the full kind of caps off the full arc of everything we did for Volnicura, and this kind of takes off where Volnicura left off.
Yeah.
So they can, you know, I think whereas Volnicura was very introspective, this one, you know, while it is a piece about love and two lovers, you know, that are the main characters in the piece, it is kind of a very future-facing, still almost like sci-fi look at, you know, what the future could be, you know, and I think, and it's also just extremely, you know, just visually packed. It's a really ambitious video that we set out to make.
It's full of incredible special effects, and it's set in this kind of cybernetic ecstasy, is how I've sort of come to describe it in my own way. Very futuristic. Maybe your most CGI'd project that you've done together as a film.
Yeah. The first piece that Björk and I did, Mutual Core, was also really effects heavy, but I think being a piece about the Earth, quite literally, it made sense to use a lot of tactile puppetry and physical effects. But this one being, like you said, a cybernetic love story, it made sense to use fully CG techniques, and you know, it was quite ambitious because we did a lot more data capture on set than we normally do, and we also just, to be honest, used a lot of the visual language that Alessandra Michel set out with the dress that she's wearing. You know, it was very much about...
So you just dropped a really big name into the conversation. Alessandro Michele, who's the creative director of Gucci. So how did he get in between your creative process? How did that all come about? Björk, maybe talk about how you and Alessandro, how Alessandra became a part of this project.
It's hard to actually pick the first moment. I think it was some sort of a conversation, a visual ping pong between the sort of masks that James Merry has been making. I'm wearing one of his beautiful masks right now.
It's so incredible, this collaboration with James, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that, because he's been making masks for you for many years, for about 5 years now, I think, right, if not longer. But let's park that and come back to that. Let's talk about Alessandro for a minute.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to remember exactly how it is, but sort of in the feeling, it is like Alessandro was adoring that somehow from afar, and it became somehow kind of a circle of some sort of inspiration or something. And then they approached me wanting to do something, and because I'm an old punk and I'm a bit tricksy when it comes to certain things like that, I was like, maybe not, but how about you? I'm not so good with these kind of huge corporate statements and don't like them so much, but one thing I do love is being in a room with several fertile minds and just make things together. Like let's knit something from scratch and let's just like do it together. So do you want to be part of that conversation with us? And he was like right up for it.
Well, what's so amazing is that, you know, fashion designers who have, you know, the most creative fashion designers that have been around have been a part of your story. I mean, you've really connected with fashion designers. So there was Hussein Chalain for Post, there was Alexander McQueen, famously for Homogenic, and many other things, and more recently Iris van Herpen, and you know, many times you've worked with costume and design to create your character. And really, in this film, the costume and the costume and the character almost one, aren't they? And they're really at the center of everything. It's almost like a world within a universe within a universe. So I guess the contribution and the dialogue between Miss Alessandra Michele and yourself must have been really vibrant, very, like you say, very fertile ground to build such an incredible world from.
I think for me, because the song for me is almost like a pure sphere that me and Alejandro Arca
Parker,
to bring
great collaboration.
to bring another person into the picture. It's just, for me, it's like this perfect sphere. And for me, the lyric really says it all. It literally spells it out if you read the lyric. And we had that between us. And for me, it became very apparent that this is sort of a video where it's kind of would be more about Andy's craft as a sort of post, I don't know what to call it, digital, what do you call it,
digital
puppetry?
filmmaker, yeah,
Or,
digital filmmaking.
yeah, and the dress, you know, would be almost like a character, you know, but I think almost like, yeah, but like a sphere, you know, where that would exist, and the choreography of the character. I mean, I think it's very beautiful the way he does avatars. It's kind of like
Avatars.
you know, it's like puppetry, and he does it in a really, you can really tell it's Andy. Like nobody does it really like Andy.
What did Alessandro Michele bring to you, Andy? What did his contribution bring?
Well, sort of bouncing off your question and also what Björk was saying, we ended Volnicura doing avatars for the VR experience and sort of telling Björk's story, her personal story, by proxy in this virtual world. And so when we first spoke to Alessandro, he was looking at a lot of those avatars. So I feel like what he did is he made that character real, and he made it in the most, you know, the grandest way possible with these iridescent materials. And you know, Björk was also talking about when she first approached me about the film and the song. We talked about how it was Björk's idea to sort of the basic narrative of this film being about two lovers passing a prism of love back and forth to each other. And so when Alessandro kind of saw when I wrote the treatment, Alessandro read that and, you know, spoke to Björk and saw the work that we were doing on the Volnicura already, and then he designed basically the avatar in the flesh, you know, for Björk to wear. And, you know, that became the visual vocabulary for the film.
Yeah.
So, you know, while my job is to tell the story visually, but also to look at what Alessandro's doing, pick out actually look at the actual materials and replicate them digitally to extend them. And that's, you know, that's very much what this film is about, is Björk extending herself, you know, through this gate and through the outfit she's wearing. And so, yeah.
If I can add one thing, I think out of all songs I've done and videos, it's been most kind of like a pure thread through. Like I think me and Alejandro Arca were talking about prisms, and I was actually doing sketches in my diary where like what happens after this kind of wound, and you know, when you have a shock, you split into different colors, almost like a prism, and then the only thing that can heal you is love, and then you unite them all into one point. And Alejandro was reading all these books at the same time from a more psychological point of view, and then he sent me a song called Prism, and we were talking about prisms as sound, as a sort of almost like synesthesia, like a prism. And then I wrote the lyric about like prism, and then we did the video based on prism. And James made a mask that basically was a prism, and I think also Alessandro Michele was also inspired by James's prism masks.
Yeah.
And then James was inspired by the dress, and we were all ended up being inspired by each other, but it was all kind of like coming from this one idea, like a prism. So it's both the sounds and the lyric and the video and the masks and the dress. Yeah.
Fantastic. And let's take a look at that mask. So is it living? Is it moving?
I hope so.
It's truly alive, but it brings you alive as well in a very different way. It hides your face, but it also brings you alive in a very different way. How do you feel when you're wearing the mask? Do you feel each mask brings a different aspect of you out, or do you feel it's about mixing a mask to a moment and an outfit?
I think it's different.
Because
with different masks.
they're very sensual, the masks that James has been making for you, which is very different from the idea of a mask, which is to obscure. They bring a real sensuality to your face and to your character.
I think our work together, mine and James, is very intuitive. So sometimes we don't even speak much, but I think sometimes they come from my ideas. Sometimes he, like this one, he just did. Comes from him.
It's almost like your eyes are extending above your head, and your lips are extending through the leaves, and it's really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both hiding and revealing. I mean, I think maybe because I've been doing what I do for such a long time, it helps me kind of be more expressive in the ways I know I can be generous to people that I don't know, and then I can be more generous and protective and give certain things to my closed ones. So in a strange way, it's kind of like helps me kind of make that flow more healthy, if that makes any sense.
I know you a little bit. We have a personal relationship as well as a professional one, and I know that you also will wear fantastic outfits and masks just to have lunch with your friends on a Saturday afternoon, where when you're not working, when you're not promoting a record. There is no kind of you're not this isn't just an act. You really live your world fully, and you are in a world that you create fully all the time when you're making music, when you're in the periods between making music. It's just something I wanted to ask you about, because people might get the impression that there is a Björk character that you've invented, and then there's you who sits at home with sweatpants and a t-shirt and I don't know, hangs out without any of the artifice, but you really are not like that.
I don't know. I think I'm a bit of both. I just came from a month of mixing, where I was actually in
mixing the album, so finishing the album.
Yeah, well, I actually was in the studio every day for like 6 weeks or something.
Did you not have your mixing mask on?
Me too. In comfy clothes.
You were naked.
I was naked.
Naked mixing. That's it. It's when it gets all bare.
Yeah, I actually was like in a coma and remote control through Andy's avatars, the mixing desk.
So let's talk about your relationship with Alejandra Arca.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the sound of this record, I've heard a few tracks from it, not all of it, but it's very different from Volnakura. It's consciously different. Talk about some of the differences that we can expect in the sonic envelope of the album, and then in some of the stories that in some of the songs.
Yeah, I think I had written Volnakura and done the string arrangements for like 14 months. Most of the writing when I met Alejandro, and he did the beats to it kind of after it was sort of done, except Not Get, which was a song where it was the first song where we kind of wrote together and produced together, because at that point our relationship, musical partnership was so strong. And then when we were done, and it was so dramatic, like doing all those concerts in Carnegie Hall, and everybody was crying, and so we were like, we've earned the lightness,
Right.
And so I also felt, as a musician, I obviously saw a gigantic musician in him. And I felt that he had gone into my world with such elegance and dignity, and interpreted it, helped me, what was there, that I wanted to meet, like, let's meet on a more equal basis. And of course, it's my album, for sure. I mean, and he makes his albums and they have his name on it, but just as a pure musician, we decided to enter this other world and this other island, which is the sort of Arka Björk overlap. And he pulled out like B-sides from my past, that the more sort of instrumental music that I made. A song called Batabith and Ambergris March, which was a song from DR9. And other like really strange B-sides that he had kind of liked when he was a child in Venezuela. And we kind of pulled these kind of, took those coordinates and made this kind of new picture. And then I arranged flute, started a 12-piece flute, Icelandic flute section, and spent a few months recording and rehearsing with them. And so I'm kind of taking the flute, the instrument I learned as a kid, and kind of like putting that into everything. So the whole album is a little bit about air, because it's sort of, we decided to have synths that have a lot of air sounds in them, and flutes that sound synthy. So it's that sort of crossover there. And also we realized there are certain chord progressions that we sort of share, even though we are generations apart. And there's a certain kind of joy, like where we keep our joy is kind of similar, and where we keep our sort of darkness is not that dissimilar. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really pleased with it. I just started finishing mixing it yesterday, but...
And how does that feel? You said earlier, before the interview started, you said you were a bit fried. Is
oh
that
my
how
God.
it feels?
You know, I mean,
Happily
like my
fried.
brain is like, it's like if you would just edit it up like a film, like, I mean, but Andy comes from the same thing. He's been like doing posts for eons. Your brain just becomes like a cabinet with like 100 little drawers. And I was like, started getting scared of myself, where I heard a sound and it was like, no, there's too much reverb in song 7 on, you know, and I knew, and I was like talking, I know that's on the 3rd minute and 12 seconds, that particular sound. Like, it was just like, it's just scary, you don't want to go there, you know.
You must be really relieved that it's over. Very happy to be able to release it to the world. When you did the interview for Days that came out last month, you called it your dating album, your Tinder album. So tell us about some of the stories, some of the songs that we can expect to hear. Why is it your dating album? Why did you describe it like that?
I was just looking at the video, just thinking, it's the ultimate Tinder ad.
Yeah,
Tinder
totally.
ad.
It is.
It's like,
Exactly.
69. I don't know. I like to leave it there. I mean, it sort of needs to be mysterious.
Of course.
I mean, one thing maybe we could say that we kind of, didn't we talk about that Chinese goddess a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the song is ultimately about openness. And that's kind of what you are when you're dating, when you're open. You're like suddenly reopening and like the world is vibrant to you again. And
it's that energy and optimism of that openness.
It's optimism, yeah. And we were, Björk and I were talking about, and James were talking about like the Chinese goddess Guanyin. She's kind of like the goddess of salvation. And, you know, she just has this very vertical, all the statues of her are just very vertical, and she has this very vertical crest. And so I thought it really worked beautifully with James's mask, the way it's like this kundalini kind of weaving that kind of culminates here. I thought was like a really beautiful motif to have that verticality. It's like openness, but also this like assertion of hope. And that's why I find the video very optimistic.
As the director working with kind of 4 different creative directors who are all inputting, James Merry, you know, Alejandro Micheli, Björk, how do you take on board all of those different inputs? I mean, is it something that becomes confusing, or is it something that becomes liberating in a way?
I find it a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the most fun thing for me to sit with Björk and James and just riff and share YouTube videos. And, you know, James is such an amazing mind and, you know, has such a wealth of knowledge, and he'll, you know, make an entire, you know, document for us to look at about, you know, the history of Kundalini lines or something, you know, like, so I think for me, I find it inspiring and enriching and nourishing. You know, sometimes you work with artists and you know, they'll give you a blank slate to make a music video, and that's nice too. But I find, you know, just as a creator, it's always nice to have a launch pad and to actually just have something that you can almost like academically explore together in real depth, and then turn that off and just start making and see what comes out of that. So I find it really nourishing.
And Björk, you really kind of create an environment for collaboration to thrive. I mean, ever since the beginning of your, you know, the early beginnings of your career, you've always been in collaborative situations, making music with other artists. You know, even in the Sugar Cubes, it was very much a kind of commune spirit, I would say, sort of a punk DIY commune spirit with everyone sharing and being involved in all aspects of the music and artwork and things like that. And then right through, working through your career, working with so many different collaborators, visual ones and sonic ones. In a way, you're the master of collaboration and somebody that I really look up to as setting a template for remaining relevant and remaining current through collaboration. What's the key to successful collaboration?
Thank you. I'm like blushing. You can see it here. I don't know. I mean,
is it as simple as something like just openness and willingness, or is there more to it?
I'm just a very impulsive kind of person. I really act on hunches, you know, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's really hard for me to, also because every relationship is different. I would also feel like for example, my relationship with Andy Huang is very different to my relationship to James Murray, you know, and my relationship to Alejandro Arca, that's very different. So it's a bit, I don't want to say it's all the same, but
it seems like you really thrive on being in dialogue and exchange with other people, and that it's those relationships that keep you moving forward. And you choose very carefully, and sometimes you go on mad hunches. I've seen in the past. But what that does, it's about interaction and about not being feared of what the outcome might be.
Yeah, maybe it is because I don't want to go too deeply into it, but when I was 14, I met all these people that were older than me, and it was the punk scene in Iceland. And like you say, it was a very sort of a group. It wasn't about dropping the egos. And if somebody needs to make a poster for this poetry book, we all do it together. And I come from this kind of background, but I think I did that for 10 years. So when I moved to London and met you guys, I had that muscle very well developed, but I actually spend a lot of my time on my own, arranging music, walking outside, making the melodies. So that's like a separate side to me that I don't really talk about. Mm-hmm. So the solitaire or the sort of lonely hours in front of the computer, I'm just joking, I'm sure you know very well. Yeah, I do. And that sort of craft, you have that, you know. I think maybe if I'm going to pretend that I know something, which I don't, I would maybe say you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. Maybe they can coexist. Mm-hmm. And that chamber of yourself that writes the scripts or writes the poetry or walks alone outside and writes melodies or writes that novel, you know, that sort of solitaire side of you, you can feed that. And then you can go and be very collaborative. Yeah. And then if it works really well to be collaborative, I mean, you drop your ego and you are very sort of, you heal and you make a flow and it's something, 1 + 1 is 3, you know, it's more than you would have done on your own. Then you can go back in the other space, you know. So I think you don't have to choose, if I had to say anything. You can do both. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've collaborated on at least 5 or 6. This will be your 6th project together. Tell me about your first coming together around mutual core. How did that come about? How did you meet?
I made a film that was like a personal project that involved a lot of kind of similar, it was like on a similar wavelength to what Björk had already developed with Mutual Core, like the app and biophilia. And so I believe it was Mark Bell actually that shared and the work with you, and then Björk reached out. Coincidentally, I was actually in Iceland when you were in Buenos Aires when I first heard from you. And so I flew home, flew right back, and then we just started, it was kind of just a brand new collaboration, and Björk was, again, very generous and open and kind of allowed me to run with it. But, that was my first experience with, frankly, just feeling that generosity from Björk as a collaborator.
You're in a really unusual place as a director of music videos and commercials, because your work is also an art institution. So, having Black Lake in MoMA as a centerpiece and now in the permanent collection there must be very interesting to be able to sort of transcend audiences and transcend the boundaries of what a music video is and what an art installation is. And I remember experiencing it and going in, and it was two screens, a 2-screen installation. Tell us why you were interested in exploring those kind of dimensions with 2 screens, and then furthermore what the virtual reality experience kind of allowed you as a filmmaker to, I guess, how that allowed you to have a different dialogue with the audience for both you and Björk.
I think I have to credit Björk for her original instincts when we first met to talk about the MoMA project. Björk's head was already thinking in the 360 space, or in an immersive space. And when we talked about with Klaus Biesenbach at the museum, we knew that we wanted to create something that people can share together, something that's immersive. But I think it was. I mean, to be honest, I think me and Björk have been through a lot of just trial and error. Like we've been through a lot of experimenting. I mean, there's that problem of wanting something to be immersive but shareable. And so I think Black Lake and Stone Milker kind of go hand in hand. Black Lake was kind of the attempt to try and create that installation physically. I think with the just being a museum right in the middle of Manhattan, there we had certain challenges, and I think what we found with Stone Milker is that you can create that immersive experience, but it is an intimate one. It is like a one-on-one one, and experience. And I think that's what was so exciting about VR when we went on that road together. So it was, but at the same time, I'm really, I feel good about Black Lake that we shot it the way we did. It was the death song. It should have been here. It should have been cinematic. It should have been widescreen, and it should have been the song was a very linear scrolling song, and so we needed the format to reflect the song. Whereas Stone Milker was this fugue-like circular song, and so it made sense to shoot in a circular medium. So I think through that experience, I've just frankly learned a lot with Björk on just how to make the medium speak to the content of the song, and so it's been a learning experience.
He's being so flattering, so I gotta have a go too. I think because obviously for every musician when they make music, it's a very spatial thing. It's a very sonic thing. Okay, this song is yellow and light and floats in the sky, and another like K-pop song or whatever is, like it's always spatial. So to collaborate with somebody like Andy, you can come up with this kind of really abstract spatial ideas, and he's going to execute them really, really well. So you get braver with suggestions, and I think also just with it was actually really exciting to just jump into this deep end of let's just do the VR thing and let's experiment in the open. But
you've gone beyond experimenting in VR. You've gone fully into VR. I mean, you've created Björk Digital, which is now a VR touring show, which has just opened in Moscow, I think. this week, and has been to like 8 different countries. You've kind of gone all in on VR. Why did you believe in it so much so early? What was it about VR that you just thought, I've got to take this to, I've just got to spend all my time exploring this?
I mean, every month I'll probably answer this question differently, but right now I'll try a new answer to see what it feels like.
Okay.
But I think something about the heartbreak saga of Vulnikura, and there were certain decisions, like I was just thinking, oh my God, I didn't perform any of those songs in TV. And I was just like, no, like that's not where it's gonna go. And I think I was really protective of the sensitive material, that it would very easily be sensationalized. And I didn't want it to be like a soap opera, you know, I wanted it just to be very wrapped in a careful ribbon, you know, a bow, and kept in a really precious place. So I did very, very few things, but very, very select. Like few Carnegie Halls, Albert Hall, and then how I took that album to the world. But then, and the MoMA show worked in some ways, but then there were other ways where it maybe didn't work. So we learned a lot from that. And when we did the Stonemarker VR, we literally had an idea in the evening, shot it the next day, and it was, you know, it was so effortless. After like a year and a half of just 50 billion meetings to try to get this kind of to work in the museum context. So we were certainly like, wow, there's like this, we tried to make it work in this context, it didn't. And it has just too much concrete on top, like skyscrapers sitting on top of us. But here we can go forever in this direction. And we were just lucky enough to figure it out that that's where it could grow. And obviously as a musician and as a performer, I knew compared to all my other albums that Vulnikura had the theatrical potential for a Greek tragedy, or like, you know, like a really like, you know, like Shakespearean sort of situation, you know. And the VR was perfect for that, but it was private. There was something about just putting that thing on your head and the headphones, and it's not there. Your private life isn't just spread all over the universe. It's like one-on-one, and it's more like, it's not in some gossip columns or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like a private circus or private theater, and it just suited the music, I think. That it was like reading a book. You know, it's like one-on-one album, and I think that's one of the reasons why it sort of worked. Okay. But we totally, believe me when I say this, we found out by trial and error. There was a lot of walls we hit until we got to that point, you know, both emotionally, or not emotionally, but just like musically, but also just with technology, because all the VR videos are done with different technologies, different teams, different softwares, different, like we could do another interview just about that.
Yeah, that's true.
So and that's where I have to cheer Andy, because I'm not so knowledgeable about all that, but just to make it like figure out how that would work, but also give room for the emotional or the music, you know.
So that felt right for the emotion of Vulnikura. Does that mean there won't be VR projects from this new album, and that you're going to release it in a different way, and that you're maybe going to perform in a different way? Like, what can we expect? What can we expect from the presentation of this album?
I felt that this album, that's why we wanted to do a normal video on YouTube. We're back.
Not on YouTube, on NOWNESS.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. It's very sorry. I'm sorry.
But I know what you mean. You wanted to do a video that could be shared and could be distributed and could be seen on a screen and not have to be put into a VR headset.
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Maybe also emotionally, because it's sort of, you know, we're tapping into the Chinese goddess of love, and it's sort of about like the most open emotional position you can be in. Similar I mean,
Well, it's your dating album, so I guess you want to get out and be as available to as many people as possible. Like, keep your options open. You know, when you're in heartbreak, you need a small, close circle of friends around you. Now, the sky's the limit, right?
I think I'm like blushing, of course, but I think
You're going to be
just
doing free gigs in like Hyde Park next.
But I just think emotion, I think it's very important to trust that with technology you have all the different formats and they actually match emotional stances.
Sure.
And I think NOWNESS video or like a 2D online video, it is very sort of like extrovert. As of all formats, it's probably the most extrovert one. And of all my songs, this one is probably the message of this lyric is kind of like all is full of love too. You know, it's kind of like as open as possible. So that's sort of the reason. But about the future, I don't want to say too much because it might jinx it. But there are several ideas going on, and I think I will find some interesting ways of. I will solve the riddle of how to perform this album live. I think.
Well, whatever you do,
Yeah.
you know that it's going to be new and different and extraordinary. But talking about extrovert, last time I saw you, you were DJing in a club in Paris for the after party of Iris van Herpen, and you are quite an extrovert DJ, I have to say. You do give it some on the decks. I wish we had some decks here. We could do a little demo of Björk DJing. It would be fierce. But why? You love it, right? You love DJing. What is it about DJing that gets you so extra? It gets you so amped?
I think that maybe being brought up in a small town, like when I was a teenager, if you wanted a good night out, you basically just had to go to the bar with least people and just take over. That's basically my method. So, I mean, you've been with us in Reykjavik, you know, you just go to a tiny bar and...
Reykjavik never sleeps.
And then you just take turns in DJing, and if the music is bad, you know, you just have to stand up and do it yourself. But I mean, I'm not the only one, Icelandic person who's like that. I mean, I've more or less been DJing since I was a teenager, just like that. But I think especially with Brandon Stosi, we had a little team in New York where we started DJing with like themes. Like for example, we once DJed for 5 hours just bass lines, which was both
Amazing.
From cellos, you know, like Bach, to like acid house, to like, you name it, also with young composers. And then it was a lot of people that we did it together. And
What
then
were some of the other themes? I love that, just bass lines. What other themes?
it was so,
did you do?
like your ears after that. It was like, we started like at 4 because we were like anti just DJing in like drunk in a party. We want to have like wide open ears. And then we would start like, it would be like Bach's cellos, and then, but it was so fun because there was so many of us. And then the next theme we did was hand claps. So
Wow.
that was so fun. And we started in like those kind of Moroccan music, spiritual. And then we went to like girl groups and hip hop, R&B, and everybody had like bleeding palms at the end of the night because it was like, my girlfriend's back. And we basically we start really sober on cappuccinos and really serious and play like Steve Reich or something. And then 5 hours into it, we're pouring drinks into our ears and, you know, clapping our hands.
Clubs are so important, though. You know, you were talking about Reykjavik and going out as a teenager and taking over the music, but like when I still see you and hear about you going to some of the most cutting-edge clubs in London, and I'm sure you love to go and explore new music and what's happening on the underground level in Berlin or in New York or in the places where you're touring. What is it about clubs and the music in clubs that's so important for you? And are clubs still good? I mean, everyone always says, oh, it was better back in a certain day, you know, whatever that day might be. But you seem to be very much plugged into what's happening now. So,
oh, thank you. I don't know. I've just always kind of followed. I mean, it's just about waking up in the morning and
or not waking
finding
up
that
in the morning.
exactly, finding that song that's gonna like make your day. You know,
Yeah.
It's that sort of enthusiasm. But I mean, I don't go out that often. But when I really follow what's going on, and then when I go out, I make sure it's something really special. So I've been really lucky. You know, last few years in Brooklyn, there's been a lot of stuff going on, a lot of really amazing music, and when I'm in London, I also obviously got really good. I've been doing those kind of combined DJ nights with Strange Themes in Brooklyn, and then 3 years ago I did a few here in London with a few friends, Andy from Platt and Matthew Herbert and Hacks and Cloak and Arca and Mika from Mika Levy. And
Basically, you and your friends are a touring DJ lineup that are festival worthy. So wherever you go, there's going to be a party, I guess.
oh, I don't know. You like, yeah.
And Björk Digital, where can we expect it to be going next?
Well, it's in 4 places close to Russia and Europe in the autumn, and then it will travel next year to South America probably, and it's really sweet because now we're adding the gate, and I'm hoping it can be this thing that travels, and I can add whatever I'm doing
Great.
into it.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
But obviously, it's about how many people offer us or request request us.
Which countries will request to have it?
Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. I was going to ask you, what's the name of the album? Has it?
Oh my God.
Have you decided yet, or can you reveal it here for the first time?
I had
I want a world exclusive. Come on.
Okay. I have had 1,000 name suggestions, and I think it's going to be called Utopia. I can't think of anything better.
Is that official?
Well, if I change my mind 5 minutes before the album cover goes into print, that might happen.
Okay.
But as I'm here with you guys, I kind of like the fact that it's a cliche, that word, and I like the fact that it has like a fascistic, weird, like, I want the world to be like this feeling about it, because that's sort of, it's a proposal how we can live in the future with nature and technology in the most optimistic way possible. We have Trump, we have Brexit, we have our issues in Iceland, we have our environmental issues. I think if there ever was an urgency or necessity to come up with another utopian model, how we're going to live our lives, I think it's now. And this is my proposals, or mine and Alejandro's, because it's very, we wrote it very much together.
Well, it's been a real privilege talking to you, Björk, and it's been a real honour to talk to you too, Andrew. You've told us so much about your process, about collaboration, about this new film that we're going to see on NOWNESS on Monday, about your new album, and you've revealed the title of it here, Utopia.
Smoke coming out of the font.
Yeah, and thanks so much for everybody who's joined us on Facebook for this Facebook Live. It's been really, really fun doing this, and hopefully it won't be the last time we all get to talk to each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.